We on.
Young JOC,
What's going on?
ready to rock.
What's
Yes,
up? What's
sir.
up with it?
Always.
Welcome to
Slow.
the Kingdom community.
Absolutely. How y'all doing?
We blessed, bro.
Blessed. So, you've been with Kingdom going on how long now?
I think it's been like 3 or 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, just about. Might be 3 months.
And so, you pretty much passed the cutoff stage. You made it through the.
Am I gonna be here? Am I not gonna be here?
Gonna be here?
Yeah.
Is he gonna
I'm here to stay.
last?
Yep.
I'm
a permanent face at the Kingdom.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because typically, how long does that last from our experience?
A month.
If that.
Yeah, if that.
Yeah.
You can't fake it for 3 months.
I mean, some people can't fake it for a couple weeks.
Right, exactly.
Really?
Because, we get a lot of having a facility. You have a lot of trainers that hit us up.
No, for sure.
As far as strength trainers.
Yep.
We might have strength trainers. We might have speed and agility trainers. We might have basketball coaches or basketball trainers that say they want to do this and they say they want to do that. And,
Right.
whole
industries like that.
Right. And we definitely encourage individuals who want to have their own, business and entrepreneurs.
Right.
And especially young entrepreneurs that have that desire to work for themselves or have their own clientele or business or what have you. So we definitely we always we always encourage that, but then we also look for ways of how we can work with you with your gift.
Yep.
So just giving a little feedback on, how you got to Kingdom.
So it's a funny story. So the last job that I had before this one, I worked at a commercial gym job, at Texas Family Fitness. And I'm gonna be honest, like about a lot of commercial gym jobs in general, like you don't make nearly as much money as you should for the time that you do invest, and you really don't work with the clientele that you want to see. You know what I mean? And a lot of kids who end up being there, who end up training, like whether it's gym pop, and I love training gym pop, but if it's kids and they're like, oh, I want to be an athlete, et cetera, it's usually because their moms or dads are like, hey, this is what you need to do, rather than like at the Kingdom where they show up and they're showing up every day to win, to progress. They know they're at a performance facility. They know they can't just like slack and just hang out here. So I was working that job, and after I worked that job, I kind of spent, I think it was like probably about a year, just kind of doing house calls and getting whatever trainer work that I could find anywhere. And I remember my friend who used to work with me at that job runs a place now called Stretch Zone. And he called me, and he knew that I was pursuing and studying vertical jump pretty intensely. Like strength and conditioning, a little bit of bodybuilding, but strength and conditioning massively. And when he called me, he was like, hey, I got this guy in here. His name is Keith. He's a basketball coach. He has a performance facility. He wants to talk to you. Now, when he called me and said that, well, he texted me that. I didn't think it was going to be right then and there that I was going to talk to Keith. But he was like, hey, I'm calling you right now. No, right this second. And so me and Keith get on the phone, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? So I explain what I do, and I had just recently become interested in flexibility and pursuing it, like seriously doing assisted stretching and knowing the value of flexibility. So I'm telling him all this, and we set up a meeting, and here I am. Yeah.
Man,
and
that's one thing.
Even funnier. I had been, after doing the house calls and training whoever I can get my hands on, I started, I really started praying about, hey, I need an opportunity. And I was kind of not financially desperate, but like in a place where I was like, I need I had purpose, right? But I'm like, where is it taking me? Where do I need to be? Doing these various house calls with Gen Pop, I don't feel like is really fulfilling my purpose. And I remember
for Gym Pop, explain Gym Pop. You're saying
Gen Pop, that just means general population.
Okay.
As in like anybody, right?
Okay.
Rather than like people who want to be athletes, people who want to increase their speed, people who want to increase their vertical jump. So, I was where were we at?
Praying.
Yeah. So it was like 2 a.m, and I remember I was just like, I don't, pray as often as I should, and I remember just really getting on my knees,
just really getting down,
exactly,
and really praying.
And I remember not even 24 hours later, it must have been like 1 o'clock or something like that. And Keith on the phone, like, hey, I got an opportunity for you. Let's meet. So you can explain what you do and see if you're a good fit.
I mean, but even to get me to that place at that time,
right?
Was something like really, because I ended up I was in a golf tournament. Right now, I'm heavy into golf. This is what ignited me. We had an event in April of this year, 2022. So I was in an event, and at one of the stations was Stretch Zone. Right, they were stretching people and all that, and I didn't get a chance to experience it, but they were passing out, a free stretching session.
And I don't mean to stop you, but that's one thing people don't know about Keith. Like in his off time, he's getting massages, he's stretching, he's experimenting all these different, going to workouts, working out at other facilities. So he likes to do all this stuff. And so just for him to be, when I know he's at Stretch Zone, that's not unusual for him, because I know he's, I'm gonna dabble in something. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I got the certificate, and I just thought it was just show up whenever you want and get a stretch. So it was a Friday. I showed up to the place, and I forgot the guy's name. Max. So Max is at the front desk, and I was like, hey, I got this certificate. Just wanted to see if I can get a stretch real quick. And he's like, yeah, we have to schedule you and all this and all that. What's a good time? So he gave me a couple options, and I selected that option. Yeah. So when I went there, got the stretch, we got to talking, I told him about what I did and everything like that. And he was like, I got the perfect guy for you. And it wasn't like I told him to call you. It's something in him that, probed him to do. Yeah.
I don't know.
You know that was he excited for you?
He could have been, because I didn't say, "Hey, man, we're in dire need of a coach and all that." So I was just like, explaining it casually. But I was there, really. Like, there's times where I want to promote, and there's times I don't. Like in that particular moment, I was trying to experience the stretch. I was really sore. I'm like, let me get a stretch, and we'll talk about the business stuff as we go. But he was adamant about it. You know what I mean? And was like, I'm going to call him right now. And I'm like, all right, go ahead. So he calls JOC. We chop it up. I follow him on social media, see his social media. And then I remember probably about a couple weeks later, I'm not even sure. Like, we never set up a time for him to come up here and meet. Like, I always just like, I'll get to him, because again, we weren't in dire need.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. He knew what God was doing and speaking to him.
Right.
So I remember on the court, I'm training, and he walks in. I didn't realize it was him.
No, yeah.
He just popped in. He just
you didn't know he was here.
I didn't know that he was here.
And then he asked him for you, and I said, he's training somebody right now.
Now, in that interim, I could have sworn the opportunity was over, right? I was like, I knew it was too good to be true. Like, I prayed about it, and now I'm thinking, I'm seeing stuff that's not really there, etc. But I was like, let me just go up there and see what's up. And I remember we chatted, and I was like, okay, this is it.
Yeah, because John was
in the lobby, and I'm like, okay, is he gonna go back there? Is he gonna talk to him? Didn't I say you can? Did I say you can go back after a while?
So I was like, hey, does anybody know Keith Spencer? And then they were like, yeah, he back there, etc. So I just went back there, and I waited on him, because I knew he was like, he just looked busy, looked like he was doing something, and couldn't be disturbed at that time. So I was like, I'll just wait here. Like, I moved out my entire calendar. Man. I called my people. I was like, hey, no, I got something to do. And he did. I got to secure this position.
So because he was on the court, he was watching. I think K-Cal told him to come in the lobby.
Okay.
But he was in the lobby. So I was wrapping up with one session, talking to the parent, and he hops up. and he was like, hey, remember we had a meeting today? I was like, did we? Yeah. I have no meeting. Right. You know what I mean? So I was like, hey, man, I'm busy. I was like, yeah. I said, let's get together. Can you come at this time, this day? It was like next Monday at 5 o'clock. He's like, I'll be there. You know what I mean? And he came, and that's when everything really got moving. Yeah. And it was just boom. Man. And I would tell him, hey, man, we're gonna throw you in the fire. We have to, because we, like you mentioned earlier, we've been down this road 10 times over. And, we've experienced people who say, not even just coaches, players that say, oh, I want this, I want. But when the rubber meets the road, they not going nowhere.
And you give them
stuck.
An opportunity.
You give them an opportunity, you lay it out in front of them, and now they just sitting in the parking lot versus peeling off. So I said, we're going to throw you in the fire. We're going to put you in some situations to see, how bad you want it. We'll give you 1 kid, 2 kids. We'll give you 20 kids. And we'll just see how, because in this business, me and Rod have realized that you have to be adaptive. You have to be able to adapt well. Right. Adaptability is a skill set that you have to have as an entrepreneur. as a parent, as a coach, right? So that's a skill set that has to be developed because we don't know how many kids are going to show up at any given time. We don't know the levels, and we're trained to be able to cut the cord up to do this. We've been in situations where, you know, the owners double booked the court and we had to train 50 kids on a half a court. We had to get it in. So from our experiences, we learned that we have to train our trainers to be adaptable as well.
And even like last week when I had the flu, I had to leave. I said I had to leave.
Yeah.
The Spectrum guy came.
Right.
You had to take over the academy.
Right.
Then you had sessions.
Yeah. So I remember I was running the academy, a practice, and a private all at the same time. And people looking at me, but it's like we've been doing this for so long that we know how to adjust on the fly. That's just what, you know, life calls us to do.
So there's definitely been a mental expansion in terms of, because I've done group training, right? But it was 3, it was 4, right? And like, but now I'm sitting on the turf and I see 17 kids run out to the turf, and I'm like, all right, I got to figure this out quickly. I got to figure this out fast. So I've definitely been able to expand my skill set while I'm here, and in terms of being able to create, like, not even, because what I don't want to do when I have a big setting like that is I don't want to fundamentally change the workout. Meaning, I want the same stimulus to appear. I want all the kids to be able to get the amount of work that they should be getting during that time. So I have to figure out, okay, I'll set it up station-wise, or if I have them doing power exercises, rather than having them do this one other power exercise, I'll have them do something where it's like a race. You know what I'm saying? Or, for instance, if I'm doing stability stuff, and I'm like, okay, I would typically have them use a kettlebell for this specific stability exercise. I'll get out the med balls and I'll have them do like single leg stability stuff, and they can all partner up, and that way all the kids can be getting the stimulus at the same time. So we could just work more efficiently.
And that's a good point, because, you know, even in us, you know, having to adapt, you never want to sacrifice the quality of the product, right? It's not about activity, it's about productivity. And that's something that I've seen with you. Like, you weren't just, okay, I got 20 kids, everybody, let's just do jumping jacks. Like, let's just move for the sake of moving. And I've seen people do that just to show, see, they're working, everybody's working. So you want to still stick with the plan. You may have to alter here and there, but you don't divert and deviate from what it is that you want to teach that specific day. So that's something that really stood out to me early on.
And now that comes from, even though I may not be prepared for, let's say, 20 kids running out there, I still, like, before I ever walked in here, I had a workout already planned, you know, and not even just a workout. I have, you know, weeks and weeks of workouts already planned and progressions, and being able to do that really gives me a basis to work from. Because a lot of times when trainers do that, oh, everybody do jumping jacks, or everybody, let's do mountain climbers, that's kind of a panicky, that's a reaction rather than a response. And in any given case, you always want to respond rather than react. And the difference between those two things is just like, one is based on your knowledge and your skill set, and the other is just like a quick thing. Oh, you feel, you know, like it's an emergency, so let's just do this real quick, rather than being like, no, I had a plan. I'm going to enact this plan. I may have to take a few different steps, but that's okay. We'll get there, you know?
Okay. So go dive into your, you know, training philosophy as much as you can. Cause I was listening to, you know, world-renowned trainer, Coach Mo, who works with John Morant, and he stated this, the secret is keeping it a secret, right? Yeah. So for what you can disclose, right, what's your structure and layout and format that you typically take athletes? Because you're Duncan. I mean, you're an athlete. I mean, you're built, and I'm seeing you. How tall are you?
I'm 5'11".
You're 5'11". I'm seeing you slam on vert and all that. So it's not like it's fluff. Evidently, it's tested because you've taken yourself and other players through it, and the results are there. So from what you can disclose, kind of what's your philosophy and structure?
So in terms of secrets, right? Well, everything that we know about physiology, everything that we know about strength and conditioning and hypertrophy, or training your elastic components and these various things, a lot of this information is it's out there for you to observe, for you to collect, for you to find. So it's not really so much that, like, trainers got this one secret exercise that he does, he got this one secret machine that he used. What the best trainers really are they are fantastic systematizers. So what that means is how they organize training, how they rotate certain exercises, how they plan for not just this week or that week, but mesocycles, so entire years, right? Like how am I progressing this athlete throughout the year? So I would say that fundamentally my training philosophy more so is about an integrated approach. So it's never like, oh, we're just working on strength, or we're just working on speed, or we're just working on flexibility, but it's how can I holistically approach this athlete, address his specific individual deficits, and get him to where he needs to be. And I would say that for the most part, I am thoroughly evidence-based, but something else that I know is that a lot of the important stuff about training and about, I would say, weightlifting or anything that we're up to in general is not stuff that's been studied, right? Okay. So for instance, you can take, and somebody who I went through a program with, Ben Patrick. Now there are things that I disagree with him about, but I would say one of the most important things that I learned while training under Ben Patrick was the fact that, like for instance, in this case, there haven't been a ton of studies on the tibialis, right? So specifically this muscle right here through your tibia hasn't been, in terms of the strength and how likely you are to get injured, or even speed or strength or any of those things, what characteristics are improved by improving the strength of your tibialis. It's never been studied. Now, if you do, a set of 2 sets of 25 tibialis raises and then do a squat immediately or go run, you immediately feel the effects. So not everything that you can know is evidence-based. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Or hasn't even been thought about to be studied. So it's like I have those 2 elements working for me. I have the objective part, and then I also have what I see and what I experience, and then also what does the athlete actually want? You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of athletes are really fast linearly, but they're not super great laterally. Okay. So what does he actually want to improve on? What am I seeing? And really just communicating with the athlete and figuring out what individual elements need to be improved.
So is that a want from what they desire, or a want from based upon me evaluating you? Yep. This is what you need. So it's what you want, but it's really what you need based upon your movement patterns and what you're lacking.
So a lot of times I'm watching a little bit of film, but really I have a whole system of assessments that I use specifically to assess where he needs to come up for what he says he wants, right? Okay. Gotcha. And a lot of times athletes come in and they think that immediately I'm going to put them on the Vertimax. Now the Vertimax has a use. It absolutely has a use. But specifically to improve his vertical, that may not be what he needs. So it's like he's thinking he's coming in so we can be like, oh, I'm going to be on the Vertimax and that's going to improve my vertical. He has an idea of what's going to improve these specific qualities of an athlete. But I'm like, no. According to the science, according to what I've seen before, I show him through the assessment. And it only takes a few weeks to really see these improvements. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, this is what we need to do to get you to the next level.
Wow. That's good, man.
And so you took yourself from not being able to dunk.
Yeah, I wasn't. So 3.5 years ago, I was not touching the rim, and now I'm dunking on 10. Yeah. Okay. Off two. Still working on that 1 foot bounce.
So right then, that's when I knew, okay, JOC, he's serious about wanting to improve others because he's putting himself through it in order to be able to train others.
Exactly. So I will say this, even though subjective context isn't everything, meaning like what worked for me won't necessarily work for you, but gaining that subjective context will definitely allow me, like, what if somebody wants to teach you something, they should at least do it well. Like, it's one thing if, let's say you no longer run like a 4.4, and you're like a 40, 50, but you're still a trainer. But if you've never ran fast in your life, like, what could you possibly be able to, like how can you have enough context about that to really be able to teach it? Because there's small details that I pick up on. There's ways that I can describe things to kids that really click for them because, I've been in the trenches for so long, you know what I mean?
And I want to stay there for a little bit because I love that mentality. I love that thought because I believe that as well. But, you have, people argue, you don't have to have had played or done this or done that to be able to teach it. Like if you watch enough YouTube videos and study enough, you can pick it up just like anybody else. Right.
You can teach it, but you can only teach it to a certain level.
Right. And I feel like there's so much instinctually from an athlete that I know to tell you this because I've been in there that a book or a YouTube video can't express.
Can't communicate that.
So it's the same thing when it comes to strength. Because you see a lot of strength coaches, they may be out of shape.
Yeah. Right.
That's keeping it real. And I'm not saying you have to always be dialed to be considered a strength coach, but you have to have some type of prior experience from yourself being in that field and being once, that type of athlete to be able to deliver the content.
Like a lot of the coaches who trained me, who I studied under, they they don't currently have 45 inch
right, understood. Because Father Time is always going to get you.
He's definitely looking over your shoulder. But I could see old videos of him. I could see not the athletes that he's trained, and that's another thing. There weren't just guys who were already great jumpers. There were guys who were like me in my context. They started with 25 and now they're jumping 35, 38 or what have you.
And that's the thing I can tell when he dunks. You can tell like he taught himself. Like you can tell somebody's long. Like me, I was gonna dunk if I'd never trained. I was gonna dunk just how my genetic makeup. But JOC, you can tell like how I'm like, this dude really taught himself how to slam. Like it just wasn't a natural thing for him mechanically. So that's really impressive.
So definitely how I my background, how I grew up and stuff, definitely massively influenced my training philosophy. So I got some amount of like athletic genetics, meaning. Like I grew up, I was playing basketball, I played soccer a little bit, but my real thing, what I really actually did, I probably stopped doing any kind of ball sports by the time I was like 11 or 12, and I started skateboarding.
Okay.
So and that's not super athletically intensive. You know what I mean? That's not in the same way that football and basketball is. It's more like it's balance, it's posture things, there's kind of stability and a coordination thing, but it's not the same thing as like trying to achieve a 40-inch vertical.
Right.
So I definitely always had a background in athletics, but I had what I would call fatal flaws or chinks in my athletic armor. That meaning I would say when I was like 19, 18, pick up a ball sport again, my knees always hurt. My joints always hurt. So I don't know why it never occurred to me, and eventually it did, was to just start Googling, hey, why is this happening? And through that process of constantly Googling and searching and finding information, picking up any books I could find, I was able to just be able to really learn what the scientific method actually is and learn how to validate a study and learn, the limitations of a study. And that really influenced my overall training philosophy because I was able to, I was able to give the gift to other people because I didn't have it naturally. So I had to learn it intensely. I had to know, like there are plenty of kids who dunk and they don't know anything. Like if you told them, what's going on with your viscoelastic prop? They'd be like, what are you talking about? I just go up and dunk the ball. So because of my background and how much I had to learn to be able to get myself to where I am, I was able to really be able to refine my craft and again, be able to give that gift to other people.
That's good, man. So you're 3 months in the kingdom. Like what are some things that you've experienced just being in this type of environment?
So outside of, again, picking up big groups, pick up massive groups real quick and not even adjust my plan, but just go off my plan and just implement it a different way. There's that element. There's also really being able to connect with the other kids, meaning like athletes kind of have a different kind of perspective. Like they are regular kids, of course, but they're competitive in ways to where, it could be detrimental for them, and I have to really like, especially kids who have always been good at something, right? When you put them for instance, I got a kid I'm thinking of, like he's a great hooper, you know what I mean? And I'm sure he's always been good, but he's making progress, he's getting better. But when I put him in context that, let's say he's not as strong as he is great at basketball, now that's to be expected, right? He's not a strong man, he played basketball. I could tell that he's kind of mentally getting in his own way, meaning he's like, oh, I'm not strong, so I don't do this. I don't need to be doing this. But I'm like, no. You have to let your identity go. Like not your identity, but your ego. Like you have to lay that on the ground as of right now. Like just leave that where it is. You're a great hooper. Everyone knows you're a great hooper.
Yeah.
But I want to make you a better hooper. I want to get you stronger. I want to make you bouncier. I want to make you faster. So like leave that. You know what I'm saying? So having a kid and being able to describe like mentally, that kind of process of letting go. And that also plays into, again, how I train. So flexibility. A lot of flexibility has to do with stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. And what that has to do with is, again, a kind of letting go. I remember we talked about this not too many days ago. You can't force relaxation, right? So being that you can't force relaxation, you just have to, it appears you have to allow it to happen. And so I'm always using that in terms of like, oh, we have to create the conditions for strength. It's okay that you're not, massively strong right now. But all we have to do is create the conditions and be okay with where you are. Of course, you're going to make progress. You know what I mean? So a lot of times when people think about training, they think of a hard kind of like a tough man's approach. But when I look at the most effective like strength teams, a lot of times they almost have this kind of Zen approach. You know what I mean? It's like, no. We have to create the conditions for strength. We have to create the conditions for a fast 40 time or a 3/4 court time. We have to create the conditions, and then the rest is up to God in a sense. You know what I mean?
Wow. So do you feel like you already had that understanding before you got here, or do you feel like this environment helped bring that out of you? Because I remember the first time, and I'm not going to say his name, but one of the players I was working with, and I was talking to him, getting on him, in a loving way, but in a real straightforward, like I'm not going to sugarcoat this.
Yes.
And then you kind of saw, he's like, man, is he crying? He walked up, he said, man, is he crying? I'm like, yeah, that's just kind of how his spirit is set up. But we deal with this, right? Was that like it almost was like a shock to you, you know what I'm saying, when you saw him.
Right.
Like, so you felt like this kind of like helped you, okay, I got to figure out how to combat that you're in your way.
Exactly.
To be able to help you get to the result.
So when I went to go have a conversation with him, that's funny. I was saying, hey man, this is not, what Keith was saying has nothing to do with your identity. Nothing to do with your identity. This is all about making you better. So you have to let go that this, like, because in his mind, like you were telling him what he needs to hear, right? And I had this happen too as well. But in his mind, he's like, oh, my identity is being attacked.
He's taking it fully
personal.
It's
like, there's something wrong with me.
Right.
And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with you. We just have to create the conditions. This is what's happening. And this is what's not happening. And this is what we need to happen. So there's like again, to becoming stronger, there's a kind of letting go, right? It's like, let go of this idea that, you identify as this kind of player, or, I identify, well, I'm this good. And if people don't tell me that, then it's an attack on my ego, and your ego is getting in the way, etc. So that was, So learning that, it was definitely a process in terms of being able to teach it. Cause I went through my own kind of process as well with that. Cause I always identified like as an artist, you know what I mean? So, cause I have a much more of a background in the arts than I do in any kind of athletic thing. But I wasn't being paid as an artist, so I had to be like, I couldn't identify as that. I have to, okay, that's not who I am. That's what I do, right? Who I am is much bigger than that. It's much broader than that. So definitely, I had my own process going through that and learning that. So again, it's one of those things where because I went through it, because I had to learn it, because I had to learn the technicalities of it, I'm able to give that gift.
Right. And I think the separator too is, because we've been through that, is sometimes, you get dropped and left there.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I'm going to tell you what you're not. I'm going to tell you what you're not doing or what you should be doing.
Right.
And then I'm going to leave you there because I don't have anything else to offer to replace it with.
Yeah.
So what we do in our approach is, we can be as hard on you as we want to because we have a system. We're not going to just drop you and leave.
Exactly.
We're going to drop you, but then be right up underneath you to soften the blow by saying, hey, you need to work on this, and this, and we're going to help you work on this. We're not going to just leave it up to you to go figure it out.
Right.
Hey, you need to get tougher. Hey, you need to do this. Hey, you need to do that. We have the place and the space and the expertise consistently to help you become what it is that you want to become.
Yeah, so I've definitely had situations where I've told a kid, hey, that was a bad jump. And I watched their entire demeanor change. So he's identified with, this particular situation. But like we said before, your identity is much, much more than this jump, much more than your athleticism, or even more than basketball. You know what I mean? So if I can get you to let go of that kind of, again, that wrong identifying, then a lot of times you can relax enough to receive the criticism that you need to receive to get better. And I'm not telling you that. I'm never telling you you have a bad jump because, I'm just going to say that and then disappear. Again, I'm telling you that because I have the tools and the skill set to be able to make sure we have fewer bad jumps. You know what I mean? So in that context.
So like, worldwide, nationwide, mental health has been like,
Huge,
on display, right? It's been, magnified, and, people are speaking out about it, which is great, because I feel like, we've suppressed a lot of it. There wasn't verbiage to put to the feelings and emotions that people had. So what you do, with the training, and one thing that I did notice early was that we would send a kid to go work with you, and they would just be like, man, I like them. And these are kids that don't just say that. Kids don't just say that without you asking them. Like, they're like, man, I like. I was like, how was it? I would say, how was it? And they'd be like, man, it was great. Man, I like him. Like, I like Coach Jod. And I was like, wow. So they would come back with a smile, and was like, and I started seeing like, man, there's something to that. So talk about that, as far as what you do, how it's holistically good for the body and the mind, and can alleviate some of these pressures that, we put on ourselves that cause mental health issues.
Absolutely. So we touched on this just for a hot second. And it has to do with how we identify a lot of times. So like, if you even think about the words that we use, like, I got this one kid that I'm thinking of in particular, and he says stuff like, I am not a good jumper. I am not. He's identified with, just like the other kid who identified with being super good. So when you put him in a context where he's bad, he's having a hard time surviving, or just making progress at all. So one kid has identified with being bad at something, so he's not even attempting either. Yeah. So you end up with the same outcome, whether or not people are identifying with something that's supposedly good or something that's supposedly bad. So it's more than that too, as well. I mean, you got to think modern life in general. Sometimes I'm looking at, even my own kind of screen time, and, the various things about our working lives or whatever. It's almost like modern society is kind of curtailed in a way to create the perfect cocktail for mental health. You know what I mean? Whether it's the social media thing, whether it's phones, whether it's the fact that you have, the breakdown of the family, and, all these other various factors that are happening. I feel like, me, again, with my own struggles, with my own personal journey, and how much I've had to dial in on the mind, and how much material I've had to read from all over the world, from the East, from the West, diving back into, my spiritual journey, my journey with God, etc. And I've been able to, again, like you said, systematize things and be able to communicate them to kids in a way to where a kid would understand it. Like, I remember I was explaining to this kid that we're talking about, I was like, what do you mean you haven't done enough to know if you're a bad jumper? It's like, you don't even know if you're a bad. It's like, that's just something you've identified with, and you're saying that to stay safe. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he's like, there's a safety in going, oh, I'm bad at this.
So if I crash and burn, I was expected to.
Exactly. But it's like, you got to check all the boxes before you can really, really say that. So with that being said, I feel like people do that in a multitude of facets in their life. So that, and the lack of kind of self-care practices in general. And I remember I really learned this. I really dialed this into how the mental aspects connect with the physiological aspects when I was getting my flexibility certification. And like we talked about before, you have to tap into the parasympathetic nervous system to really access your flexibility. Like, even if you do a ton of stretching, if you're not really relaxing into those stretches genuinely, then there are certain structures that just will not release, like the Golgi tendons and the muscle spindles. They will not release unless you relax. So you have to learn how to relax, and that's kind of a process, and like we said, you cannot force it. You have to let go and allow it to happen. And that's the only time, and even if you think about your breathing and whatnot. So, for instance, if you have really tight shoulders, you have a really tight traps, all that's kind of restricting, especially a tight midsection and whatnot, all that's restricting your diaphragm. And you can't force it. Like, you can force yourself to take a big breath in, but there's still some amount of a contraction going on right there. So you really do have to relax to even take a big breath. So you have so many factors on a feedback loop to create the perfect stress situations for
Man.
kids in general. Now check this out.
Yeah.
Look, phone, right?
Yeah,
Phone in your hand.
tense.
So you got all this
Yeah.
tense right here, and you do that every single day. Your computer, desk.
It builds
So,
up.
Yep,
Yeah.
builds up. You really can't take a big breath. So now because you can't breathe properly, you know, that affects your ability to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. So thus, because you can't take a big breath, now you're making poor decisions because you know you can't actually get into a relaxed state. Because you're making poor decisions, now those dumb decisions are going to create more stress.
You're dealing with the outcome,
and then you're going to
of,
get, you know, you can't breathe now. You feel more tension in the body. And then it's just a feedback loop.
Man.
Feeds off one of each other. So again, like ways to interrupt that cycle, I'm always looking at new ways to interrupt that stress cycle and to really understand where a kid is and, you know, how he's placed himself in his own brain.
Let's put it out there, Mix. I struggle with it. I mean,
we all do. Everybody.
And so imagine a 15, 16-year-old.
Yep.
I mean, and my struggle is that sometimes you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like it's all on you. You feel like, you know, one bad decision could derail this entire thing. You know, you see it all the time. You watch the news, it's like they're on the plight of something powerful. They made one mistake and then now it plummets. So, you know, I wake up every day with that mentality of I got to do this to keep us stable, let alone moving up to the next level. So it's something me and Rod always, you know, discuss is like, man, what do we do? How do we stabilize it and then get to the growth? So that pressure that we carry every day kind of forces us to stay in that incubator, you know, that pressure cooker.
Yeah.
So for players that are feeling that and their brains aren't fully developed now, man, I gotta go to school. And granted, they don't have a lot to think about, but those little things, those few things are big in the world. Man, I gotta make sure I'm on honor roll. Man, I'm trying to get a scholarship. I gotta get this, or I gotta perform when that college coach is sitting on the sideline. Like, how do we help players navigate that?
Yeah. So another thing about that is, I kind of feel like, especially with today's youth and the older generations in general, I feel like a lot of our issues are kind of discounted. But you got to think, like, TikTok, as silly and hilarious as it may seem, a lot of that, like, that's a serious thing. Like, if you get in a fight and lose a fight now, it's not just something that happened on the schoolyard.
Yeah,
it's forever.
You relive it.
Yeah, they're gonna share it. It's with you forever. So, and that's just not including that. Like, that's every bad decision that you make. Let's say, you know, you getting roasted in the crew. Like, before, you was just, oh, we finna roast and be done with it. But now, you know, it's captured forever and ever. And so it's like you have that, you have the social media effect, and then you also have, like I said before, kids have, you know, fewer, even though we may be getting the verbiage right, and there may be more and more kind of avenues in terms of like people talking about it and being like raising awareness. I feel like a lot of times, and again, a lot of this has to do with kids, just the breakdown of the family. And I feel like it's particularly unique to men as well, because we're not allowed to be.
Yeah, we can't have a bad day.
No, exactly. We're like, that's not for us. As in, you know, you can't be soft. You can't be. But another thing would be a lot of stuff that is self-care that can make you stronger, that can make it, and not just in the physical realm, but also in the cognitive realm as well, that can make you stronger, faster, and more agile in general, is looked at as soft. You know, like even when I first got into flexibility training, my little brother, he was like, I remember he was like, leave that to the women. Yeah. I was like, I'm trying to get faster. Right, yeah. He's probably like 11.
I remember when I used to do yoga when I was playing, I was like the only male in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but now it's, of course, that was years ago. Now there's more diverse.
Right.
Yeah. So I can see that.
A lot of things that are viewed as soft, a lot of times are exactly what you need to get tougher, you know, to the next level. That's good, so it's like, oh, you think it's soft, but the thing is, if I'm doing my breath work and working on how I breathe, working on my parasympathetic nervous system, I'm getting that like much extra cognitive performance. I'm getting that much more performance out of my lung capacity.
Yeah.
You know, so that's another thing.
That's good. I like that. So redefining.
Right.
That's good, man.
So all this right here explains why JOC it was perfect to hit our
man, for sure. I see it. You know what I mean?
strength
And
training
why
program.
we, connected, and
Uh-huh.
why I feel like, why I know God has brought us to this fold. And as we're talking, I'm present, but I'm also thinking about the many things that, this is going to lead to, and what we want to do in this space to help, take it to a whole different realm.
Right.
And getting the players to understand, because I think it's about moving past the just doing something to do it.
Right.
Just do this, you do that. No, it's about explaining it. And me and Rod always talk about it. You got to explain it.
Yep.
You have to break it down. You have to dumb it down, because you want the athletes to understand.
Yep.
So now they know why, and now they can go teach somebody else,
Exactly.
right? That doesn't, have the resources. So that's what it's all about, man. So speaking of athletes, we just started a high school academy. You've been running that, doing a phenomenal job. We're gearing up for AAU season and all that we have, in the pot with that. So talk about, your experiences working with the high school players, and what you've been doing with them in the academy, and the vision of what to add as we get cranked up in the spring.
So for the most part, I would say that my thing with when I train the little ones, so anybody who's like 5th grade and below, it's a different kind of challenge, meaning it's hard to get them to focus because they're kids, you know what I mean? They're really kids. But a high school kid, he kind of knows why he's doing, but he's also been, let's say, he's seen another trainer. So he can kind of tell when somebody's like kind of full of it, you know what I mean? Like they don't really know what they're talking about, or they're just going through the motions, or they can kind of tell when people don't care in a way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm always explaining, especially with my high school kids, less so my little ones, because they kind of want to have fun, and I know why, and I tell them a little bit about it. But with my high school kids, I'm always like, this is exactly why we're doing this. This is exactly why you're going to do this. This is how it plays a role into your overall basketball career and further. So I'm always telling them that. And hold on, remind me of the question one more time.
Just what's the vision? Like, what have you been doing in the high school academy?
Yep.
And the vision of what you're going to be adding to our teams. We're coming off a good summer. We had a lot of teams. We're bringing back, a really good 7th grade team, a really good 9th grade team. We made an announcement as far as what we're going to be doing in the previous episode. So with your skill set, your knowledge, your expertise, us bringing you in, and us, laying out what we envision for you, what are you planning to add to that to make it a more dynamic experience, to optimize performance?
So when kids are younger, there's always a more generalist approach. They need to do a few things. They need to push, they need to pull, they need to squat, they need to hinge, they need to rotate. But with a high school athlete, he's had more training time. So thus, he's not only aware like they're further along in their journey, but they're also further along in terms of being able to identify their limitations. So with my high school kids, typically what I have them do is I have them sign up for my app, so I can either get them stuff that they need to do outside of here. I have them do their stretches, or like let's say in Justice's case, I have all this training programmed, everything we have done. So it's always a more individual approach the closer and closer kids get to college, and really trying to see what they can really do with athleticism. So it's a more generalist approach to the young ones, more individual approach to my older ones. I have that going on. And with the high school kids, it's really battling egos, you know what I mean? And it's making them make sure they can, like we said before, and we just talked about this was like a recurring theme, is obviously be proud of what you're good at. And you should be proud of what you're good at. But don't let it become your identity.
Right.
So much so that you can't get good at the stuff that you're bad at simply because it's uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So for those kids that are coming back to us in the spring, and new kids that we're going to be getting in, what should they be, looking out for? Like what is JOC going to be bringing them?
So we're definitely going to be getting strong in here. Tons of isometrics. I've been reading a lot of research about the benefits of doing kind of an intense level of isometrics. I know you've seen the one where you have the bar in between your legs and they're standing up this way. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be doing a ton of elastic rebound exercises, lots of what's called a drop and catch, weighted drop and catch. And I'm just going to be, looking at everybody's movement, seeing how they're doing, and making sure I can address everything individually.
I love it, man. I love it.
That was good.
Man, it's awesome, man. Well, to wrap it up, man, how has the Kingdom community impacted you on your journey?
Massively. So when it comes to athletes and training athletes, it has really legitimized me. So in terms of
that's a good word, right?
Yeah. So
I like that.
people always kind of knew, like when they talk to me, they're like, "Oh, he knows what he's talking about."
Yeah.
But it's never been a thing where like what I've had with the kingdom when I come in here is, and especially when I post on the Instagram, when I post me doing stuff on the Instagram or stuff with the kids on the Instagram, they're like, "Oh, like I've had so many people hit me up. Like my cousin who played D1, he played in the G League not too long ago. He recently hit me up, and I was like, okay, the kingdom definitely did that." You know, in a sense, he's like, "Oh, you're training people now?" And I was like, "I've been training people for 3 years, but but you know, he sees the kingdom, he sees the progress, he sees
an establishment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People.
First, he was thinking, okay,
he's freelance.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Freelancing and freestyle.
Right. So he hit me up and he was like, "Hey, you know, you working out people? Hey, what's the app? Email, et cetera, et cetera." So you'll probably see him around here.
That's
as well.
dope.
Yeah.
That's dope.
That's good.
That's it. That's awesome, man. Well, we're blessed to have you, man, and a lot of exciting things, coming down the pipeline. So we're blessed, man, and looking forward to building, bigger, faster, stronger, more knowledgeable, healthier athletes from top to bottom, man. So we appreciate you being a part of our community. It's only up from here, brother.
Yep.
Appreciate y'all.
Sure.
Yes, sir.